Every single day, you make choices that could be programming your body to develop type 2 diabetes, and the scariest part is that most of these decisions feel completely normal, even healthy, right now. Millions of people are unknowingly creating the perfect storm in their bodies for diabetes to take hold, all while thinking they're living reasonably healthy lives. What if I told you that the morning routine you've perfected, the stress management techniques you rely on, or even the way you reward yourself after a long day, could all be quietly sabotaging your body's ability to regulate blood sugar? Today, we're going to expose 7 seemingly innocent lifestyle choices that are major triggers for type 2 diabetes. Choices so common that you probably made at least 3 of them before watching this video. Here's something that might shock you. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, over 37 million Americans currently have diabetes. But what's even more alarming is that 96 million American adults have prediabetes, and 80% of them don't even know it. The World Health Organization reports that diabetes cases have increased by 300% in the last 30 years. And this explosion isn't happening because of genetics or bad luck. This epidemic is being fueled by lifestyle patterns that have become so normalized in our society that we don't even recognize them as dangerous. The choices I'm about to reveal aren't extreme behaviors or obvious health mistakes. They're everyday decisions that millions of well-intentioned people make because they genuinely believe these choices are harmless or even beneficial. But here's what gives me hope, and what should give you hope too. Unlike type 1 diabetes, which is an autoimmune condition largely beyond our control, type 2 diabetes is primarily a lifestyle disease. Which means it's also largely a lifestyle solution. The same daily choices that can trigger this condition can also prevent it, reverse it, and help you reclaim control over your metabolic health. Let's start with something that affects almost everyone watching this video. And it's probably happening to you more often than you realize. You wake up feeling rushed, maybe you hit the snooze button a few times and suddenly you're running late. You skip breakfast or grab something quick and sweet. Rush out the door, sit in traffic feeling stressed, and by the time you reach your destination, your body has already experienced what researchers call a metabolic catastrophe. The Harvard School of Public Health has conducted extensive research on how our modern morning routines create the perfect setup for insulin resistance. When you wake up, your body naturally produces cortisol to help you get moving. This is completely normal and healthy. However, when you add the stress of running late, skip the stabilizing effect of a balanced breakfast, and flood your system with caffeine and sugar, you create a hormonal storm that your body wasn't designed to handle regularly. Here's what's happening inside your body during these chaotic mornings. Your cortisol levels spike higher than they should. Your blood sugar swings wildly from the caffeine and quick carbohydrates, and your insulin has to work overtime to manage these fluctuations. Do this day after day, month after month, and you're essentially training your cells to become resistant to insulin. Your pancreas has to produce more and more insulin to get the same response, and eventually, this system breaks down. The National Institute of Health has documented that people who regularly experience high-stress mornings and skip breakfast are 43% more likely to develop type 2 diabetes than those who start their day calmly with a balanced meal. What makes this particularly insidious is that these chaotic mornings feel necessary in our busy world, but they're actually programming your body for metabolic dysfunction. Now let's talk about something that most people consider a healthy habit. Something you might even feel proud of doing. You've heard that sitting is bad for you, so you make an effort to exercise. Maybe you hit the gym hard for an hour, take a challenging fitness class, or go for a long run. You feel accomplished, maybe even a little superior to people who don't exercise at all, but then you spend the rest of your day sitting at a desk, in a car, or on the couch, barely moving for the remaining 15 waking hours. This pattern, which researchers call active couch potato syndrome, might actually be worse for your blood sugar regulation than being consistently sedentary. Research published in the Journal of the American Medical Association shows that prolonged sitting, even when you exercise regularly, independently increases your risk of developing type 2 diabetes by up to 26%. Here's the fascinating science behind this. When you sit for extended periods, your largest muscles, particularly in your legs and glutes, essentially shut down. These muscles are your body's most important glucose disposal units. When they're inactive, glucose accumulates in your bloodstream because there's nowhere for it to go. Your muscle cells become resistant to insulin signals, and your blood sugar begins to rise even if you haven't eaten anything. The American Diabetes Association has found that breaking up sitting time with just 2 minutes of light activity every 30 minutes can significantly improve blood sugar control. Often more effectively than one intense workout followed by hours of sitting. Your body needs consistent, gentle movement throughout the day, not just one burst of intense activity followed by complete inactivity. Let's move on to something that's become a badge of honor in our productivity-obsessed culture, something that might be earning you praise at work while slowly destroying your metabolic health. You pride yourself on being someone who can function on minimal sleep. Someone who can push through fatigue to get things done. Maybe you regularly get 5 or 6 hours of sleep instead of the recommended 7 to 9, and you compensate with caffeine and willpower. The research on sleep and diabetes risk is absolutely staggering. The National Sleep Foundation has documented that people who consistently sleep less than 6 hours per night have a 30% higher risk of developing type 2 diabetes. But here's what most people don't understand about why this happens. Sleep isn't just about rest and recovery. It's when your body performs critical metabolic maintenance that directly affects blood sugar regulation. During deep sleep, your body produces growth hormone, which helps maintain healthy insulin sensitivity. Sleep also regulates the production of hormones that control hunger and satiety, including leptin and ghrelin. When you're sleep deprived, your body produces more ghrelin, which increases appetite, and less leptin, which signals fullness. This hormonal imbalance doesn't just make you hungrier, it specifically makes you crave high carbohydrate, high sugar foods that spike your blood glucose. Research from the University of Chicago shows that just 4 nights of sleep restriction can reduce insulin sensitivity by 30%, essentially giving healthy people temporary diabetes-like blood sugar control. The scary part is that many people live in this state of chronic sleep deprivation for years, never realizing that their sleep habits are slowly programming their bodies for diabetes. Now let's discuss something that affects how you fuel your body throughout the day. A pattern that's become so normal that you probably don't even think about it anymore. You might eat what you consider healthy meals, but you've fallen into the trap of grazing, snacking, or eating something every few hours throughout the day. Maybe you have a healthy breakfast, then a mid-morning snack, lunch, an afternoon snack, dinner, and perhaps something small before bed. This constant eating pattern, even when the individual foods are healthy, keeps your insulin levels elevated throughout the day. Your pancreas never gets a break from producing insulin, and your cells never get a chance to fully clear glucose from your system before the next wave arrives. The National Institute on Aging has published research showing that giving your digestive system regular breaks through periods of not eating can significantly improve insulin sensitivity and blood sugar control. Here's what happens when you eat every few hours. Each time you consume food, especially anything containing carbohydrates, your blood sugar rises and insulin is released to manage it. Under normal circumstances, insulin levels should drop back to baseline between meals, giving your cells time to become sensitive to insulin again. But when you're constantly eating, insulin stays elevated and your cells begin to ignore its signals. The American Journal of Clinical Nutrition has documented that people who eat more than 6 times per day have significantly higher rates of insulin resistance than those who eat 3 meals with longer periods between them. Your body evolved to handle periods of eating and periods of not eating. The constant availability of food in modern society, while wonderful in many ways, can actually overwhelm your metabolic system if you don't create intentional breaks. Let's talk about something that might be the most controversial point in this entire video, something that the food industry has spent billions of dollars convincing you is healthy. You've been taught that fat is dangerous, and carbohydrates are your body's preferred fuel source. So you've structured your diet around this belief. You choose low-fat or fat-free products, you base your meals around grains, fruits, and starchy vegetables, and you might even feel virtuous about avoiding fatty foods. But here's what decades of research have revealed about this approach. When you remove fat from foods, manufacturers typically replace it with sugar, refined carbohydrates, or artificial additives to maintain taste and texture. These low-fat products often contain more sugar than their full-fat counterparts, creating exactly the kind of blood sugar spikes that lead to insulin resistance over time. The Harvard School of Public Health conducted a massive study following over 100,000 people for decades and found that the quality of carbohydrates matters far more than the amount of fat in the diet when it comes to diabetes risk. People who ate diets high in refined carbohydrates, even from seemingly healthy sources like whole grain breads and cereals, had significantly higher rates of type 2 diabetes than those who ate moderate amounts of healthy fats with lower carbohydrate foods. Here's the metabolic reality that might surprise you. When you eat carbohydrates, especially refined ones, your blood sugar spikes rapidly. Your pancreas has to produce insulin to manage this spike, and over time, this repeated insulin response can lead to insulin resistance. When you eat healthy fats and proteins, your blood sugar remains stable, your insulin stays low, and your cells maintain their sensitivity to insulin signals. The American Diabetes Association has actually updated their dietary recommendations in recent years to acknowledge that low-carbohydrate diets can be effective for preventing and managing diabetes, a significant shift from their previous emphasis on low-fat eating. Your body can efficiently use both glucose and fat for fuel, but the constant glucose spikes from high carbohydrate eating may be overwhelming your metabolic system. Now let's address something that affects your body's ability to manage stress and regulate blood sugar. Something that's become increasingly common in our hyper-connected world. You might think you're managing stress well because you're not having panic attacks or obvious breakdowns, but you're living in a state of chronic, low-level stress that never fully resolves. Maybe it's work pressure, financial concerns, relationship issues, or just the constant stimulation of news, social media, and busy schedules. This chronic stress state keeps your cortisol levels elevated throughout the day. And cortisol has a direct impact on blood sugar regulation. When cortisol is high, it signals your liver to release stored glucose into your bloodstream, a survival mechanism that's supposed to give you energy to deal with immediate threats. But when stress is chronic rather than acute, this glucose release becomes constant, and your blood sugar stays elevated even when you haven't eaten anything. Research from the American Psychological Association shows that people with chronic stress have a 68% higher risk of developing type 2 diabetes. And the mechanism is directly related to cortisol's effect on glucose metabolism. What makes this particularly challenging is that stress also affects your food choices, sleep quality, and motivation to exercise, creating a cascade of diabetes risk factors. The Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism has documented that stress management techniques like meditation, deep breathing, and regular relaxation practices can significantly improve blood sugar control, sometimes as effectively as medication. Your stress levels aren't just affecting your mental health, they're directly programming your body's metabolic function. Finally, let's discuss something that might seem completely unrelated to blood sugar, but has a profound impact on your diabetes risk. You might be someone who takes pride in your social drinking habits. Someone who enjoys a glass of wine with dinner, a few beers on the weekend, or cocktails when you're out with friends. You're not an alcoholic, you don't drink and drive, and you might even have heard that moderate alcohol consumption has some health benefits. However, alcohol has complex effects on blood sugar regulation that most people don't understand. When you drink alcohol, especially in combination with carbohydrates, it can cause significant fluctuations in your blood glucose levels. Initially, alcohol can cause your blood sugar to spike, but then it can cause dangerous drops hours later as your liver prioritizes metabolizing the alcohol over maintaining stable blood glucose. The National Institute on Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism has found that regular alcohol consumption, even in moderate amounts, can increase insulin resistance and inflammation throughout the body. Alcohol is also high in calories and can contribute to weight gain, particularly around the midsection, which is strongly linked to diabetes risk. What's particularly concerning is that alcohol affects sleep quality, even when it makes you feel drowsy initially. Poor sleep, as we discussed earlier, directly impacts blood sugar regulation and insulin sensitivity. Alcohol also increases cortisol production and can interfere with your body's natural stress recovery processes. Research published in Diabetes Care shows that people who consume alcohol regularly have a 26% higher risk of developing type 2 diabetes than those who abstain or drink very occasionally. The social normalization of regular drinking might be contributing to the diabetes epidemic in ways that most people never consider. Now that we've explored these 7 lifestyle triggers, you might be feeling overwhelmed, wondering how you can possibly change patterns that seem so deeply embedded in modern life. The good news is that awareness is the first step toward transformation, and you don't need to overhaul your entire life overnight to start protecting yourself from diabetes risk. The most powerful approach is to choose one area to focus on first, make small, sustainable changes, and build momentum over time. Maybe you start by setting a consistent bedtime and creating a calming evening routine to improve your sleep. Perhaps you experiment with eating 3 satisfying meals a day without snacks, giving your insulin system regular breaks. You might begin incorporating more movement throughout your day, setting reminders to stand and walk for 2 minutes every 30 minutes. The beauty of addressing these lifestyle factors is that they're all interconnected. When you improve your sleep, you naturally have more energy for physical activity and better stress management. When you stabilize your blood sugar through better eating patterns, you sleep better and feel less stressed. When you manage stress effectively, you make better food choices and feel more motivated to take care of yourself. Research from the Diabetes Prevention Program, one of the largest lifestyle intervention studies ever conducted, showed that people at high risk for diabetes reduced their risk by 58% through modest lifestyle changes. These weren't extreme interventions or perfect adherence to complicated protocols. They were small, consistent improvements in daily habits that added up to profound metabolic transformation. What's particularly encouraging is that your body has an incredible capacity for healing and adaptation. Even if you've been following some of these risky patterns for years, your cells can begin responding differently within days or weeks of making positive changes. Your insulin sensitivity can improve, your blood sugar can stabilize, and your energy levels can increase much more quickly than you might expect. The key is to approach these changes with compassion for yourself and realistic expectations. You're not aiming for perfection, you're aiming for progress. Every positive choice you make is an investment in your long-term health and quality of life, and every day is a new opportunity to choose patterns that support your body's natural ability to maintain healthy blood sugar levels. Remember that type 2 diabetes isn't an inevitable consequence of aging or genetics for most people. It's largely a preventable condition that develops in response to lifestyle patterns that overwhelm your body's metabolic systems. By understanding these patterns and making gradual adjustments, you're taking control of your health in a way that can transform not just your diabetes risk, but your energy, mood, sleep quality, and overall well-being for decades to come. The lifestyle choices we've discussed today might be common, but they don't have to be your choices. You have the power to create daily patterns that support your metabolic health, and every small change you make is a step toward a healthier, more vibrant future. Your body is incredibly resilient and wants to maintain healthy blood sugar levels. Sometimes it just needs your help through conscious, informed lifestyle choices that honor your long-term well-being over short-term convenience or cultural norms. Take this information, choose one area to focus on, and remember that lasting change happens through consistent small actions, not dramatic overhauls. Your future self will thank you for every positive choice you make starting today.